All right, good afternoon, everyone. MicroCAD tech team here today to talk with you about FormIt. My name is Mariah Roth. I am one of the application specialists here at MicroCAD, and I'm going to be walking you through some of this stuff today. So just a little housekeeping, if you will. Feel free to type in questions within your question box. I'll try to get to those as they pop up. If not, I've built in a little extra time at the end just to address anything that might come up. Additionally, who is our audience that we're speaking to today? So we're going to talk about a lot of the features of FormIt and not necessarily how to go about doing I should say, simple things like drawing lines or boxes to that extent. That's something we can certainly get into a discussion later on offline if this is something that interests you all. So first off, just a heads up, there is FormIt and FormIt Pro. A lot of times the two terms are kind of used interchangeably. But as a reference, you can see a comparison here on your screen. If you do have the AEC collection, you automatically do have a FormIt Pro. So I'm guessing a lot of you that are online with us today probably have access to that. FormIt is great. If you're working at home, you don't have your login information, you can certainly bring information up and kind of work with it. One of the biggest differences, obviously FormIt is no cost. FormIt Pro, of course, is included in that subscription cost. And I will be using the FormIt Pro for demonstration today. A couple of the key differences that you do see down here at the bottom is that Windows installed app, which I will be using Realtime Collaboration, energy analysis, material libraries, as well as actually integrating some Dynamo. So with that, let's launch into our live demo. And hopefully this goes smoothly. That's always a thing to do when you're working with live demos. So this is your interface of FormIt for the Windows app. Up at the top, you will see the general kind of file edit buttons that we are all used to with your most any software. And then you have your large toolbars that you see kind of floating around. The top half is mostly modeling. And then that second half is actually a lot of your analysis and collaboration tools that we will be visiting. On the right-hand side is actually some properties information, as well as some more floating toolbars here, and a lot of that is for your view. Of course, just like many of the softwares that we do see within Autodesk, a lot of this is customizable to produce what you all need and how you want it to look. Looking from the get-go, so two important things kind of to note within FormIt. So importing and exporting, what kind of file types do those look at? So doing a drop down here, you will see that FormIt does support a variety of file types. The AXM file type is FormIt's file type name that is produced, as well as object files, Sketchup files, AutoCAD, and then also some JPEG images. And from FormIt, you can also export. Looking at that, you do see there is the AXM, DWG, DAE, which I believe can be fed to Lumion, which I know is a very common rendering software that a lot of firms we are seeing use these days, as well as going back to SketchUp. Right, going down all my notes here. So in reference to FormIt, sorry, I'm hearing a lot of background noise from someone. I'm not really sure who is unmuted at the moment. If you could mute yourself, that would be really appreciated. Thank you. So some modeling practices in regards to FormIt. So FormIt itself going to switch to some of my information here. Bear with me. Where is, I must have hid my information that I'm looking for. But the categories that you have within FormIt are mass, casework, entourage, furniture, generic models, parking, site, and specialty equipment. So that's kind of how you would categorize your building and how they would be modeled. Typically, we'd recommend the buildings be mass, and then of course, any supplemental information would be laid out accordingly. All right, next up, specifically we have layers also. Layers are very important, especially when coming into FormIt. You can turn things on and off. You can see I have a variety of layers here at the moment. This also is reflected on how you export your model and bring it into Revit. So just keep that in mind as well. An additional thing that is actually pretty nifty within FormIt itself is you can have levels. And these levels are vital for two different reasons. One being you do need levels in order to produce information within Insight. And then those levels will actually transfer to your Revit project as well. So you don't always have to be recorrecting information once you bring it into Revit. And then last but not least, turn on some material examples over here within Revit, within FormIt. The materials do transfer to Revit. You'll see that a little bit later on. Some of these projects were kind of pre-baked at a little bit different times, so you might see some different stages within the project. But when we do bring this into Revit, you'll see that a couple of our massings are different colors, again, representing those different materials. So one of the great features for FormIt Pro is the ability to actually host this information locally as well as in your BIM 360 doc account if you have one. So for that, you can certainly do an open sketch. And as you see here, it's from BIM 360 docs or locally. If I would bring this up, the new Sketchup, I don't want to do that. Do save to BIM 360 docs. It brings up an interface. From there, you would select the appropriate account, and then from there, your appropriate project, and save that information. You will see in here that I did kind of save one previously, and I will say that it did save quite quickly, maybe a minute or less, so there's not a lot of time to actually push this up to BIM 360. So another pretty nifty feature, probably one of my personal favorites within FormIt is the actual real-time collaboration. So this is one of the things that I could not pre-bake, so it might be a few extra seconds to start. But you come up here to your toolbar, do the drop-down, and start collaboration session. Go ahead and start a session. And what this is doing is it's creating a link that you can share with other people in your company. This would be great to actually share with clients that might be remote now, especially with the environment that we are living in. And it's to be true real-time collaboration and seeing the model from different sides. So hopefully this doesn't take too long to pre-bake. And we'll get to showing you that real time. Questions so far while this is kind of thinking? Right, I'm not seeing any, but please feel free to ask at any point in time if you do have them. All right, so our link has now been generated. So we are going to copy to clipboard. I'm going to click that. And you will see that two new boxes kind of appeared over here, so my users and my chat. And having FormIt on the web already kind of brought up. I'm going to go enlarge this for the moment. Go to my collaboration. And then I'm going to join an existing session. I'm going to paste that link. I'm going to join. You will see it's taken a few seconds, but it's not too long, really. Little computer, you can do it. And you will see then that here is our model that we just saw within our desktop. You do see I'm kind of in my own little twilight zone of working on this model in 2 different instances. And as reference, you can actually have different camera angles. For this, at the same time, you see on the right-hand side is my Windows desktop app. And on that left-hand side is my web app. And if by chance I would come in here and delete one of my entities, you will see that it truly does delete in real time within that other entity. So again, great for inter-office collaboration, clients that might be remote, anything along that line. And you can actually chat with possible colleagues that might also be on this if you aren't available for a phone call at that point in time. Right, so let me expand this back. So again, I think a pretty nifty feature. Gonna undo deleting that building just a moment. And it's pretty handy to have. So next, one of the other major elements that is actually super helpful with FormIt is Insight. And if you all aren't aware, Insight is in relation to the Green Building Studio. Again, giving you solar analysis, energy analysis, great information. You also have access to this within Revit if you guys are using it. Excuse me. And I know a lot of firms are actually joining the AIA 2030 Challenge, and this actually has those benchmarks kind of pre-built in so that you can see how your model is actually reflecting within that. So the Insight is available in both the web version and the desktop app version. Again, up on our little toolbar, it says 19.1 is the image that you would need. So you see Generate Insight or View Insight. I do have this pre-baked. It did take probably about 10 to 15 minutes to kind of generate this information. And one little caveat that I did notice in comparison to the Revit Insight, FormIt does not actually alert you that the information is being pushed anywhere. So you kind of just need to keep an eye on it when it is completely done so you can go and view that insight. So bringing that information up. Again, this is my FormIt model. Again, you guys probably familiar with it at this point. If you're familiar with Insight, you know what a lot of these items are. If you're not familiar with Insight, we actually have a webinar on that next week, so come back and join us for that also. But you can see here, I started my build, and it was actually $48 about square meters, excuse me, per year. And out of the box, I got it down to 30 just with 2 different applications. So even a very conceptual model is going to start to produce some pretty solid results early on. And you all can know as designers what you need to tweak to possibly make your model more energy efficient to meet any of those criteria that you are designing for. Okay, so 2 other out-of-the-box integrations within FormIt. So we do have Dynamo, if anyone is familiar with that. There are some pre-baked scripts. All of the ones that you see here on the screen are actually produced from Autodesk and given to clients to use. So you can do things like 3D text, put that on your building, or perhaps you can look at column grids. You're looking at spacing for your projects. You can certainly do that as well. And last but not least, one of our major elements is our plugin manager. These plugins are basically living out in the cloud that you all have access to. You can also build your own. There's also a variety of people starting to build plugins that they make available for everyone else. So you can do things like manage your cameras or clean up your models, that type of information. All right, so that's the general consensus of FormIt in itself. Oh, one little thing I completely forgot to mention for myself, FormIt also does host site information. Again, this is pretty important in regards to that solar and energy analysis. And you can see here, just kind of rotate up the top, does actually start to calculate where that actual north is. And of course, you can build according to that direction if you need to. And that information does transfer to Revit as well, so be aware of that. All right, now minimize that. I'm going to flip it to FormIt for the moment. Let me turn some stuff on because I had it pre-baked this morning. You will see most of the information that was in it did transfer to Revit. The only reason you're seeing something like the topo did not transfer, that's simply because I did not have it turned on when I brought it into Revit. That information will transfer, again, having it turned on versus off is a key player when you're bringing this in. So under your add-ins tab is where all of this information will live. So about the center of my screen is the convert or the FormIt type of information. So you will see that you can convert RFA to FormIt, which we'll come back to in a minute, Sketchup to FormIt, import FormIt to Revit, as well as reload families. So that import FormIt to Revit is what you all would do in order to get your FormIt models within Revit and then start building on top of that. So once your model is brought in, it will come in at that true north orientation. And you will need to rotate project north, but that's a simple command under your manage and then position rotate project north. Again, that just ensures that the project up is the correct orientation that you want to produce for your specific drawings at hand. As well as our levels do transfer. Zoom in here, you will see this is a level that was brought in from FormIt, so you can certainly have those throughout the project. Right, and just like we were speaking of FormIt having specific categories, those categories do transfer into Revit. Of course, the majority of this being considered a mass. If we get something like a tree here that I have in the background, it was labeled as entourage within FormIt. And if you are proficient or have the permissions within Revit, and specifically for your team, make sure your project managers are okay with this. You can certainly edit this family, change its category to something such as planting, which I have done with shrubs. And then from there, you can go in and start to swap out for any other information applied to that category within Revit. All right. Also, once you do in your masses, this is a great way you can start to place walls on those masses, and that's a command that Revit gives you out of the box. So looking at the massing and site tab, you'll see this model by face. That's what you're wanting to use to place your floors, your roofs, walls, anything of that nature. We will give you the caveat that because FormIt does not host windows and doors the same way that Revit does, that information is usually just better to be put back in manually, we have found, as opposed to trying to do a model by face and put it in that way. So of course, once you place your walls, which if you bear with me a second, I have started to do, as you see, some of these have been pre-baked in here. You can certainly come in then, they are the out-of-the-box Revit walls, and change them accordingly to whatever you need, and then start moving on with your project. We have seen, a lot of saving time if all people, if your company has modeled within FormIt, you're not losing a lot of that conceptual design stage. Now, how do you kind of work with the FormIt a little bit in regards to Revit, so to speak, more specifically? So one of the great things Autodesk has done for us is they have actually allowed content that is an RFA family to be converted to FormIt. And what that is going to do, it's going to look at very specific categories. Again, it came up on my other screen, bear with me. It's going to look at math, casework, entourage, again, all of those same categories that FormIt recognizes. And if you all have a library already pre-built with a bunch of RFA families, you can certainly select that library and actually start to convert it to FormIt content. Some items we see, such as casework, specifically base cabinets will transfer. Wall cabinets that are hosted technically will not, just because they operate slightly differently. One nuance to be aware of, unfortunately, is it will convert the backup files as well. So that's kind of a little thing to kind of be aware of and just deal with accordingly. And we would typically recommend doing this in smaller chunks of information. Just, don't go through and convert 200 or 2,000 RFA families all at once and expect everything to be perfectly good, because I have seen that Revit to FormIt transition not like that so many at one time. And one of the nifty things, in regards to converting RFA families to FormIt, is you can actually reload that information once you bring it back into Revit. So say you did take out, I see my parking here as an example, or site information. You can reload that information, and that information that is out of the box Revit is just going to be pushed back into that family that you have brought back in. All right, now one thing that probably a lot of you have questions with, and we are fully aware of it, is how this would work with SketchUp. We're aware that, a lot of companies use SketchUp. A lot of people are familiar with it. It can be difficult to have people want to always switch over. And FormIt is a great bridge for that. If you can't have, convince everyone to kind of move to FormIt. So one of the things, SketchUp can be opened natively within FormIt. So let me do that here quick. Open Sketch locally. And this is honestly something I just completely downloaded from the warehouse, I believe is what it's called. Brought this in, I literally opened it up, there was no issue whatsoever. One of the things you will see that I did just turn off is this identify watertight issues. So that's something that is a key aspect within FormIt. We don't want to have too many watertight issues, because when we try to import that FormIt into Revit, any watertight issues can actually start to cause issue. However, this one had absolutely no issue transferring to Revit. And as an example, if you allow me, I will open this real quick also. And I brought straight into Revit from the FormIt, and everything appears to be there, like it was in FormIt. So it's a pretty nice transition. I really lost, kind of no work in that type of instance. For example, one of my colleagues graciously gave me this file. It opens, see it opens. I think this is it. And I will say this one did eventually open in FormIt. However, it did take quite a few minutes. But once you see the file size of this, you will recognize why that might have taken quite a long time. And it's still actually thinking to actually open up here. So while that is thinking, you can also convert SKP files to FormIt content, such as libraries you all might have created. And you actually do this from the Revit environment, again, under that Add-ins tab, and that drop SketchUp to FormIt. I apologize, this came up on my other screen. So again, a library that you all might have that you have downloaded, and where you would want to save, a great way this. Again, you don't have to do this step if you are trying to just open a specific model. You can adjust that model within FormIt. As I'm trying to do, it's open. Yes, it did. Obviously, this is a large project that was brought into FormIt. And it handles it pretty well, I would say. It spins around very nicely. However, if I identify any watertight issues, creeping, you'll see that all that red does indicate a water issue. So this is something, honestly, that I would clean up in FormIt before I would try to bring anything into Revit if I was to do that. So I know that's a little shorter than our time frame we had talked about, but that's really all the information that we wanted to cover. Is there any questions that you all have come up with so far? No questions at all? Okay. If there are questions, we can certainly off for the day. We're 1 hour, so squeeze 30 minutes instead. If you have any questions, please feel free to one of our team members. We'd be happy to help implement this within your all's company's workflow, as well as help identify any questions if you guys are already using this. With that, everyone, a great rest of your day. Hopefully stay healthy with everything that's going on out there. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.